the Black Madonna, and the Norman theory. In the 1990s, Kirov Street, one of the central streets of Chelyabinsk, was turned into something similar to the Arbat, a pedestrian street in Moscow. Tram tracks were removed, and, to make the place more special, cast iron statues of 19th-century characters made in Kasli were put up. Nowadays, such statues can be seen practically in any large Russian city. They have become a familiar part of modern urban culture. This gave rise to another phenomenon: tour guides, who tell entertaining stories about the statues, earning a bit of money. A few times, I stopped nearby and listened to that undiluted and wild nonsense, next to which myths and legends of ancient Greece are a collection of dull and insipid short stories. All this is accompanied by ritual elements: rubbing a statue, walking around it, holding it by the hand, and so on. Human consciousness is susceptible to myth-making. Within information wars, the lowest tactical level of psycho-historic or mental wars, the deceit is practiced by distorting, twisting, and manipulating facts. The result is short-lived, aimed at getting a fast emotional response and reaction. This approach is completely inapplicable on the strategic level, especially for long-term trends. The shaping of enduring historical myths is not a trivial process. Undisguised fantasies that have no basis in reality prove to be unviable and chimerical. They are easily destroyed, and are not resistant to critical re-evaluation and changes of political situation. A decrepit and preposterous construct that has no natural harmony cannot stand the test of time. The ideology of the Third Reich was built on myths about true Aryans, but the reality proved to be just the opposite. The ancestors of the Slavs and the Aryans separated 5,000 years ago, haplogroup R1a, while the ancestors of the Western European peoples, R1b, separated over 20,000 years ago. A recent idiotic example is a myth about ancient Ukrainians and Rus Ukraine. Successful distortions of meanings that stand the test of time contain about 90% of truth and only 10% of lies that reverse the tenor of the whole. This principle becomes perfectly clear when we examine all sorts of heretical cults and teachings. A few additional details totally distort Christianity in Europe, injecting it with meanings: the Black Madonna, Indo-European Mother Goddess, Egyptian Isis, Holy Blood, and the Holy Grail, Mary Magdalene's descendants, the origin of the Merovingian dynasty, divine kings, Rex Deus, and so on. The resulting occult movement became the basis not only for the teaching of the Knights Templar, but for practically all Western European heresies since the 8th–9th centuries AD. It is all done subtly. False premises are added, and people make the required deductions on their basis by themselves. As a rule, the nature of false premises is simple. Local rules are presented as universal. As an example, many centuries from now, historians will tell that respect for rank and absolute obedience to orders from the superiors prevailed in Russia, with examples from army life. Then they will exhume an episode when a deputy minister, a general, and so on, was refused admission to a nightclub. This does happen. The conclusion from this will be that the security guard at the door had a higher rank, which is very strange, but can be explained by his priestly status, and the clubs themselves being the temples of Pan. Then one could hypothesize about the surviving pagan traditions and other nonsense. Here's a real example. The Norman theory, not Varangian, but specifically Norman, is built on just one invented fact: that the Varangians were exclusively Germanic, the Norsemen from Scandinavia. It's unsurprising that the adepts of this theory are so distressed by the idea of the Varangians being Slavic people from the southern Baltic, one of whom, by all indications, was Rurik. And yet, the Norman theory makes it possible to justify such astonishing conclusions about the inferiority of Russia and the Russians in comparison with Europe that it's no wonder there are those who cling to it.